The city hummed with the rhythm of a future defined by its towering holograms, levitating vehicles, and sprawling streets teeming with both opportunity and division. Amara adjusted her coat as she stepped out of the lab, her pace steady, her gaze sharp. A cybernetic engineer of renown, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned her place through relentless effort and unyielding resilience. Her path home took her through the industrial district, an area where shadows stretched long and promises of equality felt thin. She preferred walking. It gave her time to think and disconnect from the persistent hum of tech around her. But tonight, her solitude was interrupted by the distant sound of laughter, sharp, mocking, and unmistakably directed at her. "Hey, look what we have here," a voice sneered as she turned the corner. A group of 5 emerged from the alley, their neon jackets catching the dim glow of the streetlights. Bryce stood at the center, his posture oozing arrogance, flanked by his crew. They were young, privileged, and clearly reveling in their false sense of invincibility. Amara paused, meeting Bryce's gaze without flinching. She recognized their type, bored children of the elite, flexing their power where they thought there'd be no repercussions. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with warning. Bryce smirked, his eyes scanning her with disdain. "Help us? No, but maybe we can help you. Teach you some manners." His words dripped with venom, each one laced with the prejudices of a society that still hadn't outgrown its old vices. Behind him, the others laughed, emboldened by their numbers. One of them, a wiry man with a buzz cut, leaned closer. "What are you even doing here, walking around like you own the place?" Amara's expression didn't waver. "I'm walking home, which, last I checked, isn't a crime." Bryce took a step closer, his smirk widening. "It's not a crime. Just odd seeing someone like you in a place like this. Makes people uncomfortable." The tension in the air thickened. Amara's fingers twitched at her side, but she didn't move. She held her ground, letting the silence stretch just long enough to unsettle them. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she said finally, her voice low but firm. Bryce laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Oh, I think we do. You're just another nobody who needs to be reminded of their place." Amara tilted her head slightly, her calm demeanor unwavering. "And you're another fool who thinks power comes from numbers. You're mistaken." Her words cut through the air like a blade, and for a moment, Bryce hesitated. But pride wouldn't let him back down. He gestured for his crew to close in, the circle tightening around Amara. Still she didn't flinch. Instead, a faint smile played on her lips, as if she were 2 steps ahead of them. "This is your last warning," she said, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "Walk away. Now." But they didn't. And that was their first mistake. The crowd began to gather as the holographic feed expanded to nearby streets. People stopped in their tracks, drawn by the unfolding scene. Murmurs turned into angry shouts as the public saw the gang's cruel behavior replayed for all to witness. Bryce's face turned pale as he looked around. The growing crowd, the condemning glares, and the sharp words from strangers were unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had lived his entire life insulated from consequences, and now that insulation was unraveling. "This is out of control," he snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. Amara remained calm, her presence commanding. "You think it's out of control because for once you don't have it," she said, her tone unwavering. She tapped her wrist device again, and a synthesized voice from the drones announced, "Local authorities have been notified. Stand by for detention." One of the gang members stepped back, panic etched on his face. "I didn't even say anything that bad. I wasn't leading it, he was." He pointed at Bryce, desperate to shift blame. Amara's gaze swept over him, cold and sharp. "Complicity is not innocence," she replied. "You stood by. You laughed. That's enough." Bryce tried one last time to regain control, turning to Amara with a forced look of contrition. "Look, I get it. We messed up, okay? Just call this off and we'll make it right. I swear." She raised an eyebrow. "Make it right? How do you plan to do that?" By running back to your comfortable life and forgetting this ever happened. Her voice cut through his empty promise, each word a sharp rebuke. Whoa. You'll face what you deserve. The robotic enforcers arrived, their metallic forms moving with precision. They surrounded the gang, their monotone voices issuing commands. Remain still. You are under investigation for public harassment and hate crimes. Resist, and you will be subdued. Bryce froze, his bravado completely shattered. His crew looked equally terrified, some already raising their hands in surrender. The crowd cheered, their voices a collective roar of approval. One woman in the crowd shouted, "Finally! People like them think they're untouchable." Not anymore. The gang's humiliation was complete. Bryce looked at Amara, his face a mix of rage and fear. "You think you've won," he hissed. "This isn't over." Amara stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "You're right about one thing, it's not over. This is just the beginning. For people like you, for a society that allows this. But tonight it ends here." As the enforcers restrained the gang, Amara turned away, her steps deliberate. The crowd parted for her, some applauding, others offering words of gratitude. She didn't acknowledge them directly, but her resolve was clear. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was standing for everyone who had been silenced or oppressed. Behind her, the enforcers escorted the gang into custody. Bryce's protests grew fainter as he disappeared from view, his fate now out of his hands. Amara walked forward, her thoughts already on what would come next. Justice wasn't just a moment, it was a movement.